The city was loud that night. Horns blared from streets below, neon signs flickered in broken rhythms, and somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. But on top of a 20-story building, all was quiet, except for the sound of a young girl's sobs carried by the cold wind. Her shoes clung to the narrow ledge as she stared down at the tiny lights below. One step, and everything would end. Her pain, her shame, her fear. She placed a trembling hand over her swollen belly. 8 months pregnant, and completely alone. She whispered through the tears, "I'm sorry, I just can't anymore." But just as she leaned forward, a voice cut through the silence, firm yet trembling, desperate yet alive. She froze. Slowly, she turned her head. Behind her stood a man in his late 30s, his expensive suit wrinkled, his tie loosened, and his eyes red, not from the wind, but from the weight of battles he had been fighting for far too long. He looked exhausted, but in that moment, there was no mistaking the raw urgency in his gaze. He was a CEO, once a name that newspapers praised, now a man clinging to the last thread of his failing company. But none of that mattered at that moment. He wasn't looking at a stranger on the ledge. He was looking at someone who mirrored his own despair. "Please," he said again, taking a step forward. "Don't do this. I know it feels like there's no way out. But, I've been standing at that edge too." The girl's lips trembled. "You don't understand. Nobody does. I've lost everything. Everyone. I don't even know if I want this baby anymore." Her words cracked, breaking into sobs. The man's throat tightened. He had once stood in his own office late at night, staring out the glass windows, wondering if it would be easier to simply step out and let everything go. His company was drowning in debt, his board wanted him out, and the world saw him as a failure. But looking at her, he realized something. Sometimes the only thing stronger than saving yourself is saving someone else. "My name is Daniel," he said softly. "I run this building. And right now, I think both of us need saving." Her name was Emily. Just 22. A university dropout, cast aside by her own family when she revealed her pregnancy. The child's father had disappeared the moment he found out. Friends turned into whispers, whispers into judgment. She worked small jobs until her swollen belly made her unfit in the eyes of employers. She lived in a tiny rented room, barely affording food. The baby's kicks reminded her she wasn't truly alone, but they also reminded her of the heavy responsibility crushing her. Tonight was supposed to be the night she ended the cycle of fear. "I came up here," Emily whispered, "because I thought the world wouldn't care if I was gone." Daniel shook his head, his own eyes watering. "That's where you're wrong. Sometimes the world doesn't see us until we break, but that doesn't mean our story has to end." Daniel hadn't told anyone yet, but his company was just days from bankruptcy. Once a rising star in the tech industry, he had believed in his dreams so much that he sacrificed everything, his marriage, his health, even time with his young daughter. But bad deals and the weight of global competition had drained the life from his empire. The board was threatening to fire him. Banks were calling. He hadn't slept in weeks. And more than once, he had stood on this very roof, imagining peace in the fall. But tonight was different. Tonight, someone else needed saving, and in saving her, maybe he could save himself too. Daniel slowly extended his hand. "Emily, come down. Not for me. Not even for yourself. But for that little heartbeat inside you. They're waiting to meet you. You're the only world they'll ever know." Emily's tears blurred the city. Lights. The wind howled. Her knees buckled. For a terrifying second, it looked as though she would fall, but Daniel lunged forward, catching her wrist just in time. With all his strength, he pulled her into his arms. She collapsed against him, sobbing, as he whispered over and over, "You're not alone. You're not alone." That night didn't just save Emily, it bound her life to Daniel's in ways neither of them could have imagined. Daniel gave her a small apartment owned by his company's housing division. He paid for her medical checkups when she couldn't afford them. He didn't do it out of charity, he did it because for the first time in months, he felt like he still had a purpose. Emily, in return, reminded him of something he had forgotten: compassion. She cooked simple meals for him when he skipped dinners. She listened when he confessed the crushing weight of his company's failure. She reminded him he wasn't just a CEO, he was a father too, and a human being worthy of love. When Emily finally went into labor, Daniel was the one who drove her to the hospital. He held her hand through every scream and tear, whispering encouragement the way she once whispered hope back to him. And when the baby was born, a tiny girl with big brown eyes, Daniel found himself crying. He wasn't related by blood, but he felt something awaken in him, a fierce need to protect. Emily named the baby Hope. Weeks later, Daniel's company officially collapsed. He lost everything, his wealth, his title, his fame. But strangely, he no longer felt destroyed. Because in Emily's tiny apartment, with a baby gurgling in his arms, he realized he had gained something the world couldn't measure. Family, purpose, a second chance. But fate wasn't done weaving its story. One rainy evening, Emily received a letter. It was from her estranged father, who had abandoned her when she refused to abort the baby. Inside, along with trembling words of apology, was a revelation. Her father had once been Daniel's mentor, the man who gave Daniel his very first business loan years ago. Emily wasn't just a stranger Daniel saved on a rooftop. She was the daughter of the man who had once saved him. The circle was complete. With time, Daniel started a new company, smaller, humbler, but rooted in the values Emily and Hope had reminded him of: compassion, second chances, and resilience. Emily became a partner, handling community outreach, ensuring that no struggling mother would ever feel as abandoned as she once did. Their story spread like wildfire, a fallen CEO who found redemption not in wealth, but in saving a life. And a young woman who almost gave up, only to rise stronger than she ever imagined. By the end, the story isn't about business, or failure, or even despair. It's about the moments when two broken souls collide, and instead of shattering, they hold each other together. Daniel saved Emily from the edge. Emily saved Daniel from his emptiness. And together, with baby Hope, they built a life that whispered the one truth they both needed most.